Doing some of this. Boom, I'm in the room. Good day, everybody. Welcome to Everyday Conversation. No, welcome to Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories. And now I've got an extraordinary person going to come and tell her extraordinary story. So without too much further ado, let's drag her in. Welcome, Dr. Kathryn.
Hello. Good to see you.
It's great to have you here. Now, I understand that you've got a little bit of an interesting story to tell us.
Oh,
So, if you can tell us where you were born, not necessarily when you were born because you're a lady, and if you can describe to me what it was like, where you grew up, the schools you went to, and the education that you received. So,
okay.
you have the platform.
All right. Thank you. Well, I appreciate everybody giving me the time to listen to my story because your time is really important. And my story isn't more extraordinary than yours, but I'll share it and maybe there's something you can resonate. I do love to own my age. I'm 61. I was born in 1962, and thank goodness I'm older than I was 20 years ago because I'm smarter. But I was born in 1962 in Lakewood, Ohio, and I came from a very in a Lakewood is right next to Cleveland, Ohio, which was a very ethnic. There were a lot of ethnic different groups, and my particular family was a grouping of first generation immigrants, very strong Sicilian family. Um, Many of my relatives didn't speak English at all, even into adult, being here in this country for a long time, or started school not speaking English. So that influenced my upbringing in that my family came here fighting for the hope to have education opportunities for their children. And so when we were afforded that, it was expected of us. So our lives were very disciplined, and the expectation was very clear that if you're given an opportunity, you recognize that we really fought for this to leave Sicily as peasants, cross an ocean, and that Sicilians had to learn 40 words in English to be admitted into this country. And we're not an educated group of people, so it was difficult to learn the language, but did because they fought for it. And so that was the backdrop of my upbringing. And I was really blessed to be in Cleveland school system where they had a lot of advanced and gifted kind of classes. And I was given an opportunity to be part of that. And I was able to start studying Russian and French, violin, clarinet, piano, all these kinds of things when I was started in second grade, actually, French. So I was given a just wealth of opportunities, exposures to the arts, um, writing, speaking, all kinds of just rich opportunities. Um, and I think it has prepared me quite well. And I was just, gosh, I was just 8 when I started some of those programs. I was an elementary school kid. Um, and I do remember, I distinctly remember the moment I knew what I wanted to do for a living. And I remember I was in my bunk bed and there was something going on in the house that was upsetting to me. And I was looking out through the bunk bed and I remember thinking, I don't ever want another little kid to feel bad. I bet there's something I could do with my life. And it just hit me like, wow, that would be really meaningful, or would like it kind of flipped that experience into something that was awful or sad or upsetting into something. It was this positive directional kind of moment for me, and that really informed a lot of what I did through school and my career. So yeah, that was I mean it might as well have happened yesterday. Actually, that moment is just so clear to me. So I went through the Cleveland schools, and then went to a liberal arts undergrad. I majored in education and history. And then that was in the Cleveland area at Baldwin Wallace College. And when I graduated, I decided I was going to go as far away from Cleveland as I could. And so I went to another country, Texas. I went to Texas A&M for graduate school, and indeed it really is a different country altogether. And it was some of the best years of my life I spent there. I trained for triathlons. I started watercolor painting. I was studying psychology and just enjoying myself so much. And during that time, I got married, and my ex-husband and I kind of started our careers in academia and in our training together at that point. And so we started this journey and kind of growing up together. I was very young when I got married. I was 21. And
So you've
really,
fallen into the trap. You've gone racing ahead.
did I? I jumped over
You
stuff.
did. You jumped over so much. So let's drag you all the way back to, say, second grade.
Oh, wow.
Bonjour.
Okay.
Bonjour, mademoiselle. Здравствуйте.
I
Buongiorno.
was so,
So,
I have to tell you something. I was just so all puffed up. I was going to Italy and then France, and I was just kind of like puffed up all myself. Oh, I know the languages, right? And I hadn't even practiced or studied or anything. And I get there, and it's like that. And I'm kind of like, oh, I've got to pretend to my like, oh, I kind of like I'm catching it all, and it's hard. You're
I
not.
know
I mean, you got to
exactly
work
what you
those
mean.
muscles.
So, so were you brought up bilingual by your mum?
No, no. And it's my mother used to argue with my father that she only wanted him to speak to us in Italian at certain times, and he wouldn't. And yet he was very proud to be Italian. Looking back on it, I really think the reason for that is that there is like this rub about that identity as being an Italian American. And I remember that because I was very conscious of it, because I didn't look American. I wasn't the stereotypical. Back then, the more ethnic look was not something that was not celebrated in any kind of a way. But also, I mean, I remember being called really awful names about immigrating to my people coming to this country.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so I think my father shied away from that. And I think it probably was very much a subconscious thing. And yet, when we would go to movies in Italian, he would be, as they're speaking in Italian, it was almost like he'd pridefully be speaking the English to my sister and I don't know. It was just like maybe
Doing the
it just
translation for you.
yeah, yeah. So yeah. So I think that's probably a regret that my father would have had later in life.
Yeah.
That took him a moment to embrace who we are.
So on the language side of it, then you started picking up French and Russian. You said as well.
Yeah. in fifth and sixth grade, my I was in a special class, and we were able to take Russian dancing and French and then Russian language, and that teacher was actually a neighbor in to my home, and she became one of the most significant mentors of my life, the arc of my life. Truly, one of the most influential figures in my life. Yeah, if I was going to only have 5 people at a dinner party, like all the most famous people you could think of, Madame Lucaci would be there, front and center, actually. Really,
Wow.
yeah. I'm just
So a teacher had a massive effect on you in your
yes.
upbringing. So brilliant. So let's have a look at the area that you lived in Cleveland then, or just outside Cleveland. I mean, did you become a Browns fan because of living in the area?
Have you ever heard the term "believe land" for Cleveland? We are
Yeah.
diehard. We are believers, and it's. I'm going to say we don't lose it. It's ripped from us. It's taken from us. We never lose it. It's stolen from. Not really. We, I always celebrate a great play, even if we're on the losing side. But yes, I'm very much a Brownies fan and an Indians fan, and of course, with the Browns, Miles Garrett having gone to Texas A&M, I actually often dress up for him for Halloween because he's my hero. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
So, what was the area like where you grew up? Was it affluent area? Was it a sort of a ghetto? What sort of area was it?
Um, well, my father was an independent businessman, and he was a jazz trumpeter, and he had various different businesses where he was very successful. But earlier in life, I wouldn't say we struggled, but we were very middle class. And on that street was really fascinating was us, the 2 Vecchio girls with Mr. Vecchio standing in the picture window watching over the horizon. The problem is he scared off all the smart boys. So the plan backfired. But across the street from us were 5 um, redheaded boys, the Jones boys, Southern Baptist, Welsh and Scottish. And then up the street is a Greek family, and on and on and on, Irish. So this was our street, and it had red cobblestones, and you could hear the when the cars would go down the road, you could hear them clippity clop, and all of us kids played in the street, and it was a glorious way to grow up, and we're still all friends to this day. I'm very close to all of those people I grew up with. Um, and I illustrated that to you about the families because what's we talk about like racism and fear and prejudices. There, I don't know if I could describe 2 more different families than the Vecchios and the Joneses. I mean, really, like they had vacation Bible school. What, like they just like it. We did. I don't. We were allowed to go with them and visit, but I had never heard those words in my home, and it was very different, very emotional, very demonstrative, and are very steady as they go. And then we have all the other families, and the only emotion that I could really describe was curiosity. We were simply curious and curious about and celebrated one another. And this is sort of a funny story to me because I remember when I was raising my kids, once in a while, if kids were playing at my house, a parent might get upset because one kid got one orange slice too many, or something. Anyway, and you know, at a time in my life, I might have gotten worried about. Oh, sorry. My mother, though, was complete. just very independent, fierce woman, plays by her own rules. And the Jones boys, the mother would leave and say, Mrs. Vecchio's across the street, let her know if anything goes wrong. And they tell me they would look out the window as soon as their mom would, they'd run across the street and they said, Mrs. Vecchio, can we listen to that album? And the album was the Bonnie and Clyde album, because the last track was just machine guns. So these boys, they weren't allowed to dance. They weren't allowed. So they were like, Mrs. Vecchio, can we listen to guns? And my mother was like, well, okay, you can hear the popping, and because they were just little boys, curious. But nobody had any kind of defensiveness or angst toward each other. But so different. And in every values but respectful.
So, what was your school like? What was your sort of elementary school like? Was it a big school? Was it a small school? How was the school?
We had probably about 400 kids in the school, and it was one of the most well-known schools in the city in terms of its programs, and we had tons of resources. It was not particularly, it was not integrated. In fact, Cleveland, by the time I was a senior, started a busing program because the school system was quite segregated when I was growing up. So that was something that was most certainly missing across the board in the school system that they rectified. But we just had so many resources that now when I go into schools, because I'll work in schools now, it blows my mind because we were given an instrument. If we wanted to play any instrument, the city of Cleveland would provide that instrument so that every child could play. And my father, his way out of poverty was when the Cleveland schools gave him his first trumpet. And he played that trumpet to the day he died and played his way out of the ghetto. I mean, that was his way out. And it gave him purpose and joy. And otherwise, that not given that to him, he wouldn't have had it. And that's partly why I do the foundation that I do, providing the art supplies and those kinds of things. So,
well, we'll come on to that. So, moving through school, then, what was your favourite lesson? What did you want to get up for in the morning? What did you want to rush to school for? What was your favourite?
Art. Art. I loved. We called it CCD class, catechism class, CCD. That was the equivalent of our in the Catholic Church, the Bible study, Bible school, Sunday school, and I loved that. I was fascinated by it. I was just the whole question of what was happening spiritually just was fascinating to me in every kind of way. And the nuns who had devoted their lives and they were teaching me, and I started to develop relationships with them, just intrigued me. Like what could draw these amazing women to make that kind of heartfelt commitment, and then love us kids like they did. And they really loved us. Yeah.
So what lesson did you try and pull a sickie for? What one didn't want to get out for and didn't want to go to school for?
Algebra. And you know
Not hot on the maths then.
I don't know why, because on some level a math problem is satisfying, right? When you solve it, or like a mystery, but No, and I've realized now that I've studied neurodivergence, my brain just does not work that way comfortably.
Mm.
My brain works in curly cues comfortably.
So, so let's take it on a little bit. What about what comes after your elementary? Is it middle school or junior high?
We called it junior high school, junior high, yeah,
So,
and
what
then
was
high
that like?
school.
Did you have to move schools for that, or is it in the same building complex?
Well, the way it went for me was in the city, they would distill down one classroom, like of all the second graders, they'd put one class of gifted second graders. And then by the fourth grade, they'd take one class of the whole city of fourth graders into one class. So I was on that track. So by the time I got to seventh grade, I had had so many lessons, pushed, that I had already done the work in seventh grade. So it was recommended for me to skip the eighth grade. And that was one of the biggest mistakes in my educational uh, course. Because what they didn't factor in was the impact of that developmental period on a kid. And one year I go junior high school, seventh, eighth, ninth, seventh grade, I'm the runt, and eighth grade is like the torture year. So I come in at seventh grade, and then all of a sudden I'm in ninth grade homeroom after summer, and everybody's like, "Hey, Vecchio, how'd you get out of eighth grade?" Right? And nobody, I mean, I never thought, I wasn't prepared for that. Nobody written, it was not, nobody thought of any of that because it hadn't been done before. But yeah, that was difficult. That was really hard. Uh, but I'm thankful that I was given the opportunity. I learned from it, but it was hard. It was very, very hard. Yeah.
So, what made it hard? Was it the fact that you skipped that year, so you missed some of the lessons that you would have had, or was it about your actual time of life where you're developing as a young adult?
You know, I think just as you were asking the question, I guess for the first time, I think I realized that pressure, that pace, like the pushing and the pace, and even as I was saying it to you, French and Russian, and kids are, it's all magic. So you can't keep pushing kids. It's like with our Olympic athletes, they're burning out before they even get to the Olympics. And Norway's figured out they do it the opposite and they're winning more medals. So, uh, but what I think it was the whole thing was a setup for turning my brain on in a way that is not ideal for learning. It's a state of anxiety. It's like going like this instead of like receiving information. Moreover, it's really a highly, I think, dysfunctional way for me to operate in the world. And it's taken me a long time to start unlearning and rejecting uh, this idea or this false idea of multitasking, because you can't multitask, right? I tell you, I certainly can't. That's for sure. But that unlearning that, and that's the thing. That's what it was, like, and something's got to give, at some point, right? And yeah, you just can't keep pressing. And it's like, so what are we racing to, anyways? Like, you get to be a doctor 1 year sooner. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
what's that? And like, I mean, really like, and truly, like, that was kind of a mentality about it at the time. And I think, gosh, that's a profound, the the meta message in that is profoundly uh, in conflict to the way I'm trying to live my life and teaching my children
Hmm.
a peaceful way to live.
So let's push on a little bit. So you skip eighth grade, you've gone straight to nine. What about the rest of your high school? How did that go?
Well, I was in athletics, and I was really active in all kinds of friends and dance, all kinds of different things. And again, as soon as I got my legs firmly planted, then I started running again and graduated early from high school and was, again, it was, pressing. And so I started going to the local college have, during my senior year. And I got to go with a couple of my friends, and that was great. We thought we were just such big shots. I mean, we're just all fuck, we're like, oh yeah, we got to leave lunch early. We're going to, Cuyahoga campus. Yeah,
Going to
no big,
college,
no big.
college
Yeah,
students now. Yeah.
exactly right. Or just like flick our little student ID card.
Yeah.
But so he did that, and then like I said, when my kids graduated, they're 27 and 25. When they graduated, most all of their friends were debating about college and what college. When my
Mm.
sister and my best friend Diane, who was raised with us, there was no question about college. I mean, it was just like, you're going.
Yeah. You
And,
didn't get a choice.
oh, yeah, like, you're going. And I just, um, my mother, all my other cousins and aunts, uh, they all married Italian men, early, young, and stayed in town and came home for Sunday dinner. And my mother said repeatedly, I raised you two to go out and conquer the world, not come home on Sundays and make me happy for Sunday dinner. That was
Mm.
not what I raised you to do. And so we went out, and um, then after college or after high school, we went out. And my sister, she's just a magnificent human being. She truly is one of the most accomplished and intelligent people I've ever met in my life. Really. She really is magnificent.
So your athleticism then? What was your discipline? Was you a runner? Was you shot put?
Oh, I played a lot of different sports. I mean, really, from the time I was very young, I started ice skating, and like serious ice skating, hockey skating, softball, lacrosse. Volleyball was probably my biggest sport, and probably the one that I was most naturally talented at was racquetball, which is not popular anymore at
Mm.
all. But there was a time where it was, and yeah, I was really competitive at that. And then when I graduated from college, and I was kind of trying to figure out what's a sport that had a cardiovascular piece to it. I love golf, but a cardiovascular piece that I could be committed to. And then I had seen an episode of the Iron Man on Wide World of Sports, and it had a profound impact on me. And I wanted to see if I could do a triathlon, and I thought I could never do it. And never say never. Everything's possible.
So did you manage to do a triathlon?
Yeah, I
And where did you
did. And
come?
oh, I mean, really, I am not good at, I'm not competitive at it in but for me, what's competitive was finishing with integrity, finishing strong, and, and training well. And that was what my goal was. And frankly, I really didn't think, I, 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 I didn't set myself up to be disappointed if I didn't achieve it. I just thought I'll try
Mm.
to achieve it. But I was in graduate school. One of my professors was a hypnotherapist, and I knew from the amount of time that I could swim or bike, I knew that cardiovascularly I could do a 20-mile, 22-mile run, but I would drop at like the 13-mile mark repeatedly. And so I told my professor, and he said, well, let me hypnotize you. And I'm like, really? Come on. I read Runner's World. I know all that head stuff about running. He hypnotized me the next run. It was like, I could have been Forrest Gump. Just keep running. I mean, really, it was unbelievable. And it's just amazing to me how much sports are in our head, or
Yeah.
not just sports, but our limitations are so impacted by what's happening in our brain.
It's amazing what the human body can do when it's pushed and pushed and pushed, and 99% of people never hit their peak performance, never get to that peak of endurance where they can't go any further. They so many people just give up at the first hurdle. So let's move on. Let's graduation from high school. So you graduated a year early.
Well, yeah, it was a year early, and got in trouble for wearing. My best friend and I got in trouble for wearing Devo glasses when we got our diplomas. And for me, it was the only way I was gonna walk across the stage was if I could do something, some doofus maneuver like that, which we thought was just so. It's so predictable, right? It's like, oh, you're wearing funny sunglasses. How clever of you. How unpredictable. But so yeah, we that was it was fun. High school was just so much fun. It was huge. There was three almost 4,000 students in my high school. So it was
Wow.
enormous, enormous. And yeah, it was a really nice place, and I had a really good experience in being involved with my
That
friends.
must have been some prom. A massive prom.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I guess well, in our senior class, yeah. I mean, um, yeah, that was a lot. Because back then, most people went. Now it's interesting to me that it's not as popular for people to go. But yeah,
Mm.
but it was huge, huge school. Um,
So after graduation, you pulled the pin and
I
went
went
to
right
Texas
up
A&M.
when I went to undergrad, and then I graduated from my undergrad in history and education, and then I had my car packed to go to Texas A&M. I accepted a job and entrance in the graduate program, and I can remember my aunt kept telling me, "Do not turn the car around." And she was my best friend, and she just said, "You get in that car and you go and you conquer the world and you keep driving forward no matter what. Don't get tired, and you keep going forward." And
So
she
this,
passed away. I'm just,
Yeah, I just want to drag you back slightly. Uh, History. What period of history is your favourite?
well, my area of concentration was British history. The period that I am most fascinated is the Reconstruction, uh, post Civil War Reconstruction era, in U.S. history. But British history to me is just, I can't get enough of it. Just can't get enough of it. When I go to
We've
England,
got several thousand years of it, haven't we?
yeah, oh yeah, of course, right? And but I love England. I mean, I can't get enough of that. I have such great memories every time I go there. Yeah, love it. So that was my concentration, but Reconstruction is really interesting. There's so much to that, I think, now that we could all learn from globally. If you think of like, and even like interpersonally, how do you rebuild from like complete,
Yeah.
despair and nothingness? And yes, it can be done, and uh, sometimes I think the moments of my greatest brokenness where I had to rebuild, I look back and I think, well, that was my opportunity for a rebirth. I just didn't know it at the time because I was afraid, or you know i I didn't trust enough, but it was my apex moment.
So you're driving forward. So you didn't turn around, you carried on going. You took the
Yeah,
advice.
yeah,
So you arrived at Texas A&M.
I did. I met Texas A&M, and I met my husband, ex-husband now, and we started our journey of what we kind of called tag team graduate school. I put you through this master's, you put me through this master's, I put you through law school, you put me through a doctor, and went back and forth. So the next stop from Texas A&M was he went to law school at University of North Carolina, and I took a position with the maximum security prison, and I was a staff psychologist at the maximum security prison there in North Carolina, and absolutely loved the job. And then went on to Duke and then seminary. And it was because of my experience with the death row inmates that I went to seminary. Because for me, sitting with inmates, human beings in human cages, where the only thing that they have is spirit, to to be free. Because not only are they locked in a space, but they're locked in, most of the time they feel shame, they don't receive forgiveness, they're treated, even in our societally, they lose their people in our country with felonies are not allowed to vote. I mean, all kinds of shaming sorts of things where I think we're unclear about, do we want to rehabilitate or do we really want to punish? We're not really quite certain about that. But to me, the antidote was spirit. That's how these people, most often poor, underprivileged, getting in touch with spirit. So I wanted to learn about world religions and what do people believe, not just what does the American Christian Church believe and tell us, but what does a global Christian community believe? I want to know more about Judaism, Buddhism, secular Buddhism, all of it, and it's really helped me in working with people because I know more.
So there must have been some job working with people that were on death row. Was it all male or was there female in the prison?
No, I worked at the women's prison. There were female psychologists who worked in the male prison. Uh, that was actually the way that the last prison riot occurred, was a conflict in that. For me, that just, I'm not afraid of much of anything, and I don't have trepidation from a fear perspective, but it doesn't. I don't feel like I could do as free of my work as freely as I could, and I for me that was such a right place to work. It was so rewarding. Um, and I worked with death row, but I also we had an inpatient psychiatric unit. And a lot of the times I would get what we called safekeepers. So if there was like a notorious crime, those inmates couldn't go to general population to be processed. They had to come to my unit so they could be protected because they're high profile, right? So that was, we did, so I dealt with a smaller population, but a much more concentrated, sort of problematic issue population, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So how long did you do that for?
About 3 years, I think. And then I did, uh, after that, I did in private practice, I started doing forensic work because I had so much experience um, doing expert witness and having to do just whenever we would have anyone that would come up with some kind of an issue in court, we just got a lot of experience. And then yeah, it informed my private practice. So and I still keep some forensic work going because it's very interesting to me.
Sounds fascinating. So when did you go back to college and your husband put you through? What was the next course that you did?
Well, I'm not so sure we completely agreed on in the end about did he pony up on his end of the deal entirely. No, I'm laughing because what actually had happened. Uh, I had a real difficult time having children and ended up gloriously adopting two children. And because of the way that happened, I had to do kind of a workaround to finish my doctorate. So that was fine. That was fine by me. My children are everything to me. So I didn't care how much I had to work around anything.
So let's come forward some. What has been your most um, challenging job in your life?
I'm laughing as I don't want to say, but I'm gonna. Every time I think I, I this is embarrassing, I think no, I shouldn't. You know what? We need to make fools of be willing to make fools of ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
The job I was okay. It's nothing in adulthood. It was a high school job, and my son actually wrote a paper about it when he was in fourth grade. And the title of it is My Mother's Summer Job in a French Fry Truck. I know. So it was one of my girlfriend that I played softball with. She had this great idea. She goes, hey, Ray Kowalski, his parents own a French fry truck and it rolls all around Ohio all summer long. She didn't remind me, 110 degrees. Goes all around Ohio all summer long, and we fry French fries in this trailer. It's so much fun. Again, didn't remind me that now you're in the back of a truck, it's 110 degrees. Do you imagine how hot it is back there? And she also didn't tell me that she's now dating Ray Kowalski. So I already know, or if I would have known, she would say, I know I'm going to be in the back with the fryer. She's going to be up with Ray, having a good time, right? Counting the tips. So yeah, And then the worst of it, the most shaming thing, is my ever so cool, beautiful older sister is hanging out with her friends on a Saturday night, and I can see them, and Felicia drops me off from the French fry fiasco, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I smell like a French fry. I know it, and I got to walk in there and walk past. Oh, Marty Jones, he is so cute, and I got to walk past him. And my sister calls me out. You smell like one big giant French fry. Where have you been? And oh my God, I just like up the stairs, terrible. But that was the worst job I ever had, and it's followed me even in my son's elementary school.
So, so moving on from there, what's the best job you've ever had? What's one that's been most rewarding?
It's gosh, it makes me I almost cry. It's what I do now because I feel like when I get a paycheck, I'm like cheating. I really do. And I'm 61 years old, and I think I don't ever want to retire. I mean, I don't want to work full time, but I could never give up what I do. And I really do feel like, how could I get paid for this? Because it it's life giving to me, and being able to work with underserved, underprivileged people who are really hurting, but have the courage to pick up a phone and ask for help. To me, that's just the greatest privilege to be able to receive a call, because that first call that's hard to do. That's really hard to do. And to say, I'm going to talk to someone honestly about what's really going on in my heart and not hide, and that's just, to me, life-giving. And it's like being in that bunk bed hurting about something and go, there was a whole purpose of every sad thing or difficult thing that ever happened. It all worked into some purpose in every day of my life now.
So, what are the sort of problems people come to you with? I mean, obviously, some sort of addictions and stuff like that. The first stage is recognizing you've got a problem, and then B, where do you go for help? And what's the sort of problems that you encounter? What are the types of people that come?
Well, I think what I see is sometimes we subdivide from mental health into like groupings like veterans, recovery, autism, and I kind of see it like that we're all humans, you know, and what's like the greater thread that connects us as humans, because the rest of it to me is almost like getting in the weeds around, like, the world is a real messy place. We just get messed up in different messy places. Bottom line, most of us feel too much shame. We run from shame. We do really toxic things to get away from shame, and it causes more shame, and it goes around, right? And for me, the issues I see is really two things: lack of connection, and then not knowing. People say connect, but they don't know how to connect. So it's easy to say connect or uh, go to this event, and then nobody knows how to talk to each other. So it's even more frustrating. Um, you know, so it's that. And the other piece is, can people trust their own experience as being enough, or do they question themselves, their sense of reality, and the validity of their own experience as being enough? That is what I think people are missing, and part of it is because people get gaslit so much, and reality gets skewed so much, people lose sight of that, their center point, the
Yeah.
voice.
So that's what you do nowadays. People come to you with not knowing where to go, what to do, and you're like a guiding light for them to bring them through their issues.
Well, well, I don't know if I'm a guiding light. I guess I kind of see I hope I'm sort of like a traveling companion, you know, with, with real clear boundaries to kind of coach someone along, like, you know, almost like looking ahead, kind of like in a bike ride. The person who's a lead biker is, you know, pointing their, you know, stick, rock, whatever, so that you don't crash. It's like staying a step ahead and kind of go with a client, kind of going, yeah, okay, you sure you're okay in that? You know, just kind of giving them a heads up, like there may be a rock up ahead. You know, you okay? All right, it's your, you live with it's your choice, but you know, that's kind of how. Um, that's a big part of it, but a lot of it is the healing work of uh, just the creative process
Mm.
itself. And I think a lot of people want to go away with, they want me to give them a worksheet. Or sometimes I'll joke around and I'll say, why don't we go to the cash register at Kroger's, and on the magazine it'll say 10 steps to an excellent marriage. And then we'll check it off, and then it'll, you know, like let's simplify it. Like I'm just, you know, kidding around with him, but you want a worksheet, and then check, it'll fix it. But it, it'd be nice if it worked that way, but it just doesn't sometimes. And they're intangibles. Um, the what happens to people's brains when they allow themselves to create, it's indescribable, it's difficult to define and quantify, but it's clear that it happens. And I think it changes us from this really weird techno culture that we're in, where things are going like that, to a whole different vibration. When you're creating, whether it's cooking and creating, or painting, or designing something, it things start to shift inside people's hearts and bodies.
So I understand that you've written a book. So what's your book
Oh,
about?
I'm writing a book about the Sicilian immigration, but I think you might be talking about the return on investment study that I did. I'm not sure.
Don't know what
Um,
you've got out at the moment.
the what?
What have you got going on at the moment?
Oh, the book that I'm writing is called La Via Vecchia, and Vecchio means old in Italian. La Via Vecchia means the old road. And it, it, the title of the book is No More La Via Vecchio, No More the Old Road. And that's what the Sicilian peasants said when they determined themselves to leave Sicily and come to America. And Italy is very much a caste system. Northern Italians, very light skin, blue eyes, and then we moved down, and we're very dark skinned. Um, so, uh, um, um, so I lost my place.
So, so you're on about the book. When's it likely to come
La Via
out?
Vecchia.
Yeah.
So I'm wrapping it up, and my mother's passing at the moment. It's all about our story through my family. She's the last living relative from the original family, meaning the aunts and uncles, and she's passing. And so when she's passes forward, I'm going to release it. But I keep tweaking parts of it, but it's really about what it was like to grow up pre Godfather, post Godfather, and then explaining what what it was really like for Sicilians coming here and how the darkness of our skin led to lynchings and other issues that I don't think a lot of people just know that part. Now, we're not special in that, we had some special experience that other groups didn't, but it's interesting to me that it's just such a not known, not such a known part of our story, and even that FDR supported the discrimination. So, so that's what it's really about, and it's also, I think, to really honor my parents for, despite many difficulties, for giving my sister and I an education, because it's everything. It, it,
Yeah.
it, it's the keys.
Wicked. So that's due out sometime in the not too distant future then.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
So that's due out in the not too distant future.
Well, yeah, but can I tell you what I think the next book should be? In the car on the way to family therapy. Like, to me, this is a fascinating idea of what happens in the car when the family's driving to family therapy, and the conversations that a family has when they're going to family therapy. I think that's just like a fascinating study. You know?
That sounds like a fly on the wall job. That does. You just have a think, and the sort of thing that will go through your mind, and the sort of conversations you have when it's like in the back of a limousine when you're going to a funeral, when you've got
Yeah.
the family sat there, and the sort of things that the conversations that you have about the person that you're going to say goodbye to, can be quite bizarre and quite humorous and quite funny and quite sad, and you get all of that wrapped up inside that little bubble of a car on the way to,
And
to
that is so funny. I can be irreverent sometimes with my humor, and it's funny, so funny to me. And just refreshing that you said that is my friend Diane, that was really raised as a sister with me. She reminded me the other day, she said, "Do you remember when your dad passed away, what I said at the funeral home?" And I said, I'm afraid to ask. It's probably something real funny. And we were standing there, and of course, I mean, again, it's irreverent, but I mean, I have nothing but respect for my father, but he would have loved it because he was hilarious. She looked over and she said, "One thing I will tell you, Kathryn, for sure, he's the best look. He's never looked better." She goes, "It's unbelievable. I can't even believe it, but it's true." And she meant it. That's what was so even more hilarious about it. Anyways, but my gosh, you got to get a sense of humor about this stuff, right? I mean, none of
absolutely.
us got out of here alive, so what are we all like tragic about it? It's not like we're gonna, right? I mean, it's predictable.
We've all got that same ticket. Sooner or later, we're going to go, and I think,
Yeah,
it's all about celebrating a life rather than mourning a loss. And I think, if you can have a real enjoyment about celebrating somebody's life um, rather than being all sad at their loss. And I think that can help lots and lots of people through those difficult times.
right, right. And have you ever had the experience where, like, you're kind of in a not really present because you're thinking about something, and you go through the day, and you spent like a 12 hours in your day, and you've been in a trance, you've been completely not in your day, like in other words, like for me, it's like I might as well have taken that day and wiped it off the map, because I don't even really know what I was thinking about, but that time is now gone forever. But if I was always thinking, and I try to do this in my meditation in the morning, today is just one day. And there's a reason this is set up, night, day, time limit. Why? Otherwise, for me anyways, I squander it. If it's limitless, I don't value it like I do when I realize, my gosh, I wasted my thoughts worrying about something that doesn't matter, put myself in a trance. I didn't pay attention to my dog who needed my attention. I missed, missed important things that people needed to be cared for because I was in some headspace worried about somebody
And
thought about something
irrelevance.
better, right?
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Kathryn, I really enjoyed our little time together. It's been
It's so
truly
nice to meet.
fascinating. So,
Nice.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow, what an amazing lady. I hope you found her that fascinating as I have. So until next time, TTFN, ta-ta for now.